our next topic, we are going to be talking to a friend of the show. Now he's a friend of the show, but everybody knows him. His name is David Story. David, welcome back, brother. It's good to talk to you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So, yeah, like I said, everybody knows David. He was a host of the show for the first year that we were on the air, a little more than a year. He is currently...
Let's back that up. Let's say co-founder.
Co-founder.
Okay? Make sure Mr. David Story gets the credit he deserves.
That's right. That's right. And he was and is the president of the Machinists Union Local 44. They represent 350 workers at the United Launch Alliance in Decatur. They manufacture rockets. And that's why he's with us tonight, because ULA has been... My jaw has just dropped at the stories that you've told me, David. They've been simply malevolent in dealing with y'all about this vaccine mandate stuff. And look, the vaccine mandate is there are some people among whom this is a touchy subject. Okay, so we'll get to the touchiness maybe here in a bit. But starting from the beginning, as a first principle, in any workplace, this ought to be the case. But in a union workplace with a union contract, this is a bedrock of good faith, cooperation between labor and management. And that is that any change in the working environment has to go through negotiation. And, David, my understanding is that y'all went through negotiation with the employer, and you had made an agreement that there were certain exceptions to the mandate that would be given, and as some of which I don't think anybody would disagree with. But before we go there, I guess really quickly, what can you lay out the process of what that looks like when an employer, especially when it's like a government mandated change, when they want to make a change in the workplace? What is the process for those negotiations, and why is it important that everybody get that, even if it's a policy that we like? Even if, let's say, you, listener, support vaccine mandates, you should still support bargaining over the conditions of the mandate. David, can you walk us through what happens there, some of the mechanics?
They just reach out to us and tell us that there's a policy that they would like to institute. And generally, an official letter to bargain can be sent, or we can just make a request and say, well, we're going to bargain over that, it can be anything. It can be, we're going to ban hats in the workplace. We don't want anybody wearing hats anymore. Could be a number of things, but in this case it was a vaccine mandate, and just so we're clear, we're following the vaccine mandate. Our bargaining was part of the vaccine mandate. It wasn't that we're trying to skirt the vaccine mandate, because the mandate includes a portion for those that have deeply held religious or significant medical reasons for being exempt.
Right.
And so, that it follows the federal mandate perfectly, what we negotiated and what we agreed to. They're just refusing to follow up to what they put their signature on.
Right. And so y'all negotiated that and agreed to it. And we should make mention that for the people for whom exceptions were agreed to be made, even though they're now not following what they agreed to, the exceptions that were agreed to, people that didn't get the vaccine would have had to undergo weekly testing. Is that right?
Weekly testing, masks. They'll still have to wear masks. Yeah.
Yeah. So
what more? I don't know how much more. We've been working as essential Department of Defense workers for the last 2 years in this facility without a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
There has, in the entire 2 years, there's not been one case that has been contracted at this facility, because we work together from the get-go to ensure the safety of all the employees. And now, it's a scam.
Right. Well, so, and the scam is that they're saying that they're doing this presumably for the safety of the employees, but what's actually happening is that there are a total of 13 out of, like I said, 350 machinists. There are a total of 13. So we're talking about, what is that, 3%? 3% of the workforce, 97% of the workforce then is vaccinated. And we're talking about 3% of the people who had exceptions that they requested, and all of the exemptions were denied. Is that right?
Yeah, well, there's still a few on medical that are in the facility that are still, they're being tested, and they're following the process, but they're still under review, so they're still providing a lot of information.
Have there been any people that have been terminated yet?
Not yet. We've negotiated that they'll keep their health insurance while they're on administrative leave till we solve these grievances. And, luckily they've lived up to that so far, but that's liable to change at any minute as well, because, we had a signed document saying that they would accept the exemptions, and
right.
They've refused to do that. So,
this is unpaid administrative leave?
Unpaid administrative leave. Yeah. So they're basically just being hung out to try through Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's like I told you whenever I talked to you, I'm not anti-vax. You know me. I was, because I was in the defense industry, I was able to get my vaccine before most people my age were, and I was the first one to get it. Just as quickly as I could.
Right.
But the problem is, like the guy I was telling you about that's got leukemia, that's been on chemo for the last 4 months, his doctors told him, don't get it, don't get it. Another guy that I work with side by side has a blood disorder that he's almost died from. The doctors had to fill out 12 pages of information and submit it. So we've went through all these hoops that they've asked for us to go through, and I said, I'll screw you,
Right. And, I mean, that's the... And you mentioned, I believe, that the fellow who had leukemia has had COVID. I mean, like, there...
He also brought in a serology report showing that his antibody load is higher than the average antibody load of somebody that's had the vaccine.
Yeah. I mean, it's just... It's like just total vindictiveness at this point, because there's no reason to actually try to go through with this. For one, the actual mandate is not enforceable at this time because of the courts. So they can't say that, the government's making me do this. This is totally their prerogative. And in fact, the state government has passed a vaccine mandate ban, for which there was supposed to be guidance last week from the Alabama Department of Labor. I was able to speak to the Labor Secretary of Alabama last week when I was down in Birmingham, and he said that guidance was supposed to be out last week, and I meant to check before the show, and I forgot. So maybe, David, that's something that you can... He said that it was supposed to come out Friday, so maybe that'll be homework for both of us. But so what is the recourse then? Like, what is the union's plan to address these issues? I mean, this is a person that we're talking about, a guy who's got leukemia, who his doctor is telling him he should, he's got reason not to get the vaccine. We're talking about a guy with cancer. We're talking about a guy with a blood disorder. There has never been anybody that has said 100% of the people need to get vaccinated. That's never been an argument. It's always been that everybody who can get vaccinated ought to, in part, to protect the people that can't get vaccinated, not so that we can throw them out on the street and kill them. I mean, it's so I'm sorry. It's so frustrating. And the CEO of ULA is a big conservative donor. He funds Yellowhammer News. You see his ads and their press releases all the time on Yellowhammer and on these talk radio places. And of course, none of them are they're not even really talking about that, despite the fact that this is, the workers have been out there protesting, and this has been an issue. So what is the union's plan to make sure that these workers are able to keep their jobs?
I mean, we're just going to keep progressing through the arbitration process. Unfortunately, the companies refused on several instances to give us information requests. When we've done information requests, it's just been a constant fight. It's been a constant fight. So they're dragging their feet as long as they can. Unfortunately, most of the listeners to the show know the arbitration process is absolute crap. It takes forever, but our hands are tied, and that's the only way for us to fight it. I know that some employees on their own that have went out and filed suit. I've heard that's kind of iffy, but as far as the union goes, we'll fight it to the bitter end, and but it's probably going to be at best February, March before we can get in to see an arbitrator because of the holidays.
Right. Yeah, well, and that's not. It's so frustrating, and there's really no, it just doesn't make sense. They've been hiring cops because of the protests to stand guard, for 24 hours a day, I think you said. So it's not money, because the tests cost much less than the money. And like you said, it's not safety, because y'all worked for 2 years without a vaccine. And the people who don't have vaccines are going to be required, and they are required to do these testing and social distancing and masking protocol. And they're only 3% of the workforce. I mean, it's just, there's...
Well, just to be clear, let me clarify, because that's kind of misleading. There are 3% of the represented workforce. Now, my understanding was, I don't ever want to come on the show and mislead, or for people to feel like they got the wrong information on the show. My understanding was, and I'm not privy to this information because they're not represented employees, but we're roughly outnumbered 6-1, represented versus salary folks at this facility. So my understanding, and a lot of the engineering staff have been recent hires from college because of the way that the company treated the engineering staff that were here. So my understanding is there's quite a large number of younger, less than 10-year out of college engineers that had asked for exemptions, and they've lumped that number in whenever they've talked to the media. But, as you know, and as I know, I don't really care about at-will employees. They're not on our contract. What they do as salary that's up to them. They don't have a contract.
And they don't have...
Negotiate collectively.
Exactly. They're at-will employees. What happens to them is totally the prerogative of the boss.
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant to what they've got no right, despite, right to work being the law that everybody says to like. They've got no right to work. You have a right to work, David, but they do not have a right to work. So they can... I don't
mean to put if they want to join...
They should join.
I've got cards.
Yeah.
Come see me. I've talked to them numerous occasions over the past several years, and we've come close to getting them organized. Not yet. Maybe. Hey, if you're listening, I got cards.
Right.
Come see me.
Right. Yeah, but because they don't have a contract, because they have no just cause provision in their contract saying that they've got, they're at-will employees. They can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. So,
and that's something I wanted to emphasize real quick, because, as dire as this situation is that you're describing, David, the flip side to it is these handful of employees, these members that you were assisting, they have you. They have the union's backing. They have language in this contract that is being violated, but is there nonetheless, as opposed to these other folks you're mentioning who have no recourse. And so, as kind of outgunned as you are on this fight, there is a fight to be had. And I think that speaks to that broader issue that we speak on time again is, having a union is better than not having a union.
Right.
Just bottom line. And I think this is a good example where even with the union, the employer is acting egregiously, but you still have a puncher's chance in this fight. And I do think that's just so disturbing that, the company would agree to this language. They would agree in a legally binding contract that they will honor exemptions. And here you have, these two cases are, these are not people who are just playing games because they're anti-vax. Right. And I get that there are people like that in workplaces across the country, but obviously this is not the case. So, I appreciate what you're doing to support those members.
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
All right.
I don't mean to sound so despondent or, depressed over it, but it's frustrating, because this is the holidays, and anybody that's
right.
Most of these folks are family members.
Mm-hmm.
They've got kids.
Yeah.
They got,
No, you've got a right to be frustrated. It's frustrating. It's BS. I almost said I almost said something worse, but putting a person who's got leukemia on unpaid administrative leave, who has had COVID, it's like
who is
evil.
Following doctor's orders.
I like how do they go to sleep at night? I don't know, but
how much? If we got like a minute left, I would like to give an example.
Sure.
They hire these doctors. My job requires me to have a physical every year, have eye exam every year, have a hearing exam every year. About 5 years ago, I had to go in for my physical. The nurse, the ULA nurse, had put the paperwork in the door for the doctor to come in. He gives me the physical, fills everything out. So as I sat in there waiting in the room, I went out there and grabbed my file out of the door just to see what was in it. Lo and behold, ULA had went through and had already filled out all the answers that the questions that the doctor was supposed to ask me. They had already went through and given all the proper answers for my physical, so the doctor just had to sign his name. So this is the kind of people that you're dealing with. They just buy off doctors. Right. In other words, my physical meant nothing. They had already done all the paperwork for it.
Right. Yeah, these are not people that care about the health of their workers. That's for sure.
No.
David, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it. If you want to see more about what they're doing, you can follow him on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. You can follow the Machinist Union Local 44 on Twitter and Facebook to keep up with their fight. And we'll be updating you as the fight goes on.